Amarnath contacted me to ask me if I would consent to join the book release of his memoirs. I'm not entirely sure why. But obviously, I agreed immediately. And I must tell you why. One, of course, I say this at the risk of embarrassing him, but he was really the legend of our times. He was not just a legend of our times, but honestly, I couldn't have imagined that one day I'd be sharing a stage with him. And you have to understand this, okay? He started his test debut in 1969. I was in school at that time. And in fact, the team that he played against, I happened to see the match in Delhi, which we happened to win at that time. But from 69, again, when any of us think about Indian cricket, I think nobody has any doubt that 1983 was the inflection point. And he was not just the inflection point, but he was the man of the match of the inflection point. Now, there are some younger people in the room who may not really understand how big 83 was. Okay, so recently I was at the Hindustan Times 100th anniversary celebration, and they had, in 100 years, some big, the big moments of India. So I took this picture of the big moment of India. Some of you are sitting far. It says the cup is ours. There is Kapil Dev, your picture, understandably. There's Mohinder Amarnath, and there is Madan Lal. Now, this was how big it was. And, countries have won the World Cup, not just us. Pakistan won it at one point, Sri Lanka won it at one point. But nowhere else was it as big an inflection point as it was in the history of cricket, because if you look at India's role in world cricket after 1983, it fundamentally changed. There was a second reason why I so quickly said yes, which was, even though at that time I had not read your book, but as someone, just a few years younger than you, interested in cricket, a general sense of the sport, there was always a feeling that you got a bit of a raw deal. And, all of us know this. I mean, imagine a person who takes the wicket of Keith Stackpole and Ian Chappell in the first test and doesn't play for 6 years after that. So, I asked myself, I was curious, why? How? What happened? And I said, okay, if he's inviting me for the book release, that means I have to read the book, which means I probably will figure out what actually happened. So I must say, it was a very good read. I thank both of you. And I got to know very much more after reading the book. And I think comebacking is a, if anything, an understated word for you. And I think for me, therefore, to be at the release of a book and share the stage with someone like this was really something which meant a lot. But there is a third reason. And the third reason is a kind of I would say, personal hobby of mine, which is I like to constantly compare the evolution of cricket in India with the evolution of Indian foreign policy and with India itself. And as I said, and I'll speak about that a little bit. For me, you're the real thing. You're the person who made it happen. So I said, okay, here's a chance for me to see you, to see other living legends, and therefore my very quick response to you. Now, in my travels, fortunately I travel a lot, and fortunately I read in my travels. So when I went through the book, I had some takeaways, and I'd like to share some of that with you. I think the first takeaway from your book was that the world is intensely competitive. It is intensely competitive, but respect is earned. So the same Clyde Lloyd in 1976, who did not spare any of you from bodyline bowling, was also the fielding captain who was generous enough to declare the pitch unfit in 1983. And that, in many ways, was respect earned. There is a second takeaway. And that takeaway is a difference which one person can make. Because reading through the memoirs, it's actually a tale of blood and gore. Okay, I want to look at your hand and look at all those stitches which you have, and the stitches, the bruises, the difficulties, but all of which, reflected a spirit and a temperament. And those incidents you relate about facing Michael Holding or Jeff Thompson, when some others were talking, why me? Your mindset was, why not me? And so, in a way, to me, you were the wall before there was a wall. And when I look at that period and what it would have meant, facing those people who we heard about that era on radio, because many of us hadn't even got access to a TV then, it's something, we really stand in awe. Now, one person can make a difference, but one person can also serve as a model of an all-rounder. I mean, today we take all-rounders for granted, even more a model of a baseballer. I mean, I saw that episode in your first test of what the captain's reaction to you was. And today I think of a Bumrah. And I ask myself, what a way we have come. What a long way we have come. So in many ways, you're a model, you're a pioneer. You started things which others have followed upon. And in many ways, if we are where we are today, I think we must always acknowledge the models and the pioneers. My fourth takeaway was actually on the team spirit. And if I had, not a complaint, but I would say, there were people who played for themselves, and there were people who played for the team. You were obviously the cutting edge of people who played for the team. You have some very interesting stories there, but you are very diplomatic about it. So, I had to scratch my head. One day maybe I need to ask you, can you exactly tell me who was who in that episode? Because a lot of names are not taken in that book. So those were my takeaways. But I come back again to my point that, my interest as someone, who's very, a very avid follower of cricket. Because to me, the common thing which between your line of work and mine is really the competitiveness. And often people, when they think of foreign policy, I get this question, saying, it must be like a chess game, grand stratagem, you make moves. It's actually not like chess at all. It's far more like cricket. And it is like cricket because, first of all, there are many players. Two, the playing conditions keep varying. Playing at home and playing abroad are very different. You are at the umpire's whims at times. I won't even talk about the cricketing board. There are many formats. And at the end of the day, a lot of it is about psychology. I do exactly what you are doing, trying to outthink the other team, trying to get into their heads. That every time you go out there to do your business, it is actually that competitive spirit that you tell yourself, I have to win this. So I must share with you one, not a secret, but one habit. Many of my colleagues know this. We often, at least I often, use cricketing analogies to describe people. That if I have to tell somebody, saying, take risks, I would say, yaar, wo Sehwag, be a little bit like. So, cricketers are great analogies to explain to people in very complex situations what they should be like in their behavior. So, in my own system, if I have to tell someone, hang in there, take it on the chin. Whatever happens, stand your ground. You are the analogy I use. Now, I can think of a few other similarities, as I said, between cricket and foreign policy. One of the points today, again, because the world has changed so much, it's very hard to to appreciate how it was in the 60s and 70s. There were big gaps in our playing foreign teams because not everybody had that interest to be, we weren't that big in the sports. I mean, one example you give is between our first tour of Australia and our second tour, it was 8 years. Now, interestingly, something like that is happening in foreign policy too. And by the way, in Australia, I must tell you, between prime ministerial tours, sometimes there are 30-year gaps, sometimes 20-year gaps. So this, today an India that the world wants to play with, and India which is frankly good for global business, and India which sets standards, which tests other people's mettle. It happens in my business also. And that to me was interesting. But there were two pieces of advice I saw. One was what your father told you, and I think that applies so much to us. About playing fast bowlers. To me, the entire world is a bunch of fast bowlers coming at me. Move early, play late. This is the advice I would also give to my colleagues. Move early, play late, prepare well, anticipate, read them, and then play. And the other is what you said about Pakistan and the 1982-83 tour. You said you played them better because from the traditional side-on position, you now move to an open-chested position. I couldn't have found a better description for our Pakistan policy than that. So, what I want to say to all of you today, we are here to appreciate, we are here to admire, we are here to applaud. You are a person, I think, really true grit, stout heart, a strong rib cage, never say die, absolutely reliable, selfless. In many ways, a future generational model, not just in cricket. So thank you again for the privilege of